taking our conversation from Sunday and taking it further in, taking it to a new level. So we're going to unpack a little bit from John's message this Sunday and just kind of see where the conversation goes. We just want to welcome you in. If you haven't been part of Midweek, I'm Owen, and I got some people here with me. So I'm going to switch this view and see who we have. All right, we got Pastor John chilling on his front porch.
Hey
He's
guys.
got his party hat on, so that's good. And then we also got Pastor Matt over there. We decided to all wear hats today, all of us guys. So there's Pastor Matt. Pastor Matt is our counseling pastor here at Heights. You've seen him several times throughout our online broadcast season. And then we have someone whose face you may not recognize, but you probably recognize her voice. So Marissa, say hi to us and let's hear that voice.
Hi guys.
Sound familiar, Marissa?
Oh my gosh, she's the person that called me.
That's it.
Are you serious?
Oh
That's
man.
her.
Yep, it's totally me.
She sits in that dark room right there with the black behind her. Just calls people, but seriously,
In the dungeon.
In the dungeon.
Absolutely.
She's the sunshine.
That way all my
pencil.
focus can be on who I call.
Oh, see, look at that.
Oh, nice. That was smooth.
Hey, I
Smooth.
can manage, right?
There you go. So come on, how many phone calls?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I really don't know. Owen keeps telling me the average. Owen, what was the average?
So this is seriously a crazy number. So a lot of you guys know we've been doing, trying to make calls out to everybody just to check on everybody, how they're doing. We had a team of staff people helping out. So Marissa made in 30 days, she made over 400 calls. So I mean, it's for real.
No, it's fine.
So
it's good. It was fun being able to call people and see how everyone was. It makes you feel a little less alone, a little more a part of the community.
Yeah,
so.
Dude did an awesome job. So so we recognize your voice there. And so we figured, hey, let's get you in here and have a good conversation. So this Sunday, John, was a message I know because I was in the chat. It really resonated with a lot of people. I don't know if you want to kind of, give a quick little kind of recap. It was coming from the life of Elijah. And then we can jump in. We want to kind of get at the idea, the topic kind of around this idea of what happens when the brook dries up. So maybe set that up with what we talked about on Sunday.
Yeah, I think for me it was interesting where the inspiration came from. Sitting on a sea-doo at Lake Powell and seeing all alone in this like end of a cove and seeing this giant black bird staring back at me. And instantly, I don't know, I mean, obviously it's the Lord, but the trigger being, could you imagine being stuck here? No one knows I'm here. There's no cell service. I didn't even have my cell phone with me. And God goes, hey, I'm going to use that bird to feed you for a while. I mean, just the whole thing is like mind blowing in that context, let alone then, stepping back to First Kings and Elijah, goes to the king and the king's, there's that wind I told you about. But the king is just doing evil in the eyes of the Lord and to the point where he's setting up, worship of other gods and trying to squeeze out, get rid of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And so in that context, Elijah rolls up and goes, hey, it's not going to rain, which was direct slam against their gods. From there, then God speaks to him. He ends up down by this brook in a ravine. And God goes, the brook's going to give you water and the ravens are going to come and feed you. And the story goes that morning and night, the ravens brought, which we talked about on Sunday, goes 100% against their nature. But they bring food and it's consistent. And it's morning and night. And so just leaning into that, Sunday we focused on consider the raven because then Jesus picks up on, hey, look at the birds of the air. And he actually uses the term raven in Luke is how it's recorded. And so we talked about consider the ravens and just this idea of God's provision, but also how God uses us, that just like he can use the ravens, even when it goes against direct wiring, he uses us the same way. And so that was Sunday. But the end of that story, which we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time on, we kind of just pushed the boat out for conversation, which the great part about Sundays is that's really the goal of a Sunday, is if we can create conversation that carries on the rest of your week, that's really the goal of a Sunday, is to get you to where in community you take it further, like we're going to do tonight. But the idea that this brook that God specifically led him to, that was providing him with life-sustaining water, he watched dry up. It just says sometime later. It doesn't even give us a time frame. It just says sometime later the brook dried up. And just that, for me, it's such a visual of, can you imagine being Elijah? They're all out looking for you. The king wants to kill you. They have a history of killing prophets. They're hiding other prophets. And now the very life source you have is drying up in front of your eyes. And we joked about it, but at some point the guy is probably sucking watery mud, and can you imagine the questions that go through your mind of, okay, God, like, you brought me here, like, what's the deal? But just that idea of watching God's provision kind of dry up in front of your eyes is kind of a, like, pretty stark picture to kind of lean into. But
can't you feel that? I mean, you just think about being in a survival situation, and God leads you out there to this brook, and it's weird, and there's a bird bringing you food. And you're like, okay, but it's working, right? And then the brook starts to dry up, just that water, a little bit less water every day, right? And God doesn't give him an out right away, and at some point if you're Elijah, you're wondering, so is this it? Is this where God brought me? And now this is how my story ends, like the guy that got fed by birds, and brook dries up. I mean, it's just a weird, it's almost like it's kind of a weird comedy in a way that's also just stressful and tragic, And especially Elijah is a really emotional guy. That's one I really like Elijah. If you look up his story and you read it, it's in 1 Kings 16, 17, 18, 19 in there.
Yep.
And he's just a very emotional guy. Like, he is not a perfect character, and he kind of has his own journey with God is paired up with his ministry for God, so he's living these highs and lows. And I just imagine an emotional guy like him out there watching that brook dry up, and he's just sweating it,
I think it'd be super fun to do a series on Elijah. Like, I just think it's such a real, tangible, God speaks, there's obedience, there's, this angst of the highs of ministry, puts a bell to this low where I just want to die. Like, just let me die, and I just think it's, like you're saying, it's so relatable, because that's life, man. It's highs, it's lows, it's everything in between. And yet walking with God in the midst of all that and what we learn, and it's pretty special. So that's where we were on the weekend.
People identify with a lot, and kind of the idea for tonight, this extending the conversation, came from the chat on Sunday. Had a couple people ask at the end of your message, John, like, so what is the brook? Like, what does that mean? Like, when the brook's drying up, like, what is the brook? And I thought, man, that's a kind of a good, deep, interesting question. So, Marissa, you're new, so we pick on you. When you hear that whole, the brook's drying up, I mean, what's coming to your mind what's your brook? The kind of thing, the source of, like, what's sustaining you, out here in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, no pressure on the new person.
Yeah, thanks. Love that, Owen. It's great.
I'm all about making you feel
we got this really deep theological question at the end of Sunday. So why don't you?
The very first question. Let's dive right in. Deep end situation.
That's what I do.
Oh man, what is the brook for me specifically? I think that it is my joy, to a certain extent, with my relationship with God, because it's not just, and I say joy, not meaning happiness. Obviously, that's not what that means. I once heard someone say that there was a contest to paint a picture that basically just gave the description of joy. And one of them did a beautiful sunset with, it was just a perfect scenario where when you see it, all you feel is just this peace, this serenity, this joy, right? And there was another one where it was just a complete storm. It was just mayhem everywhere, waves are crashing in. But if you look really closely in the very back of the painting, there was this little bird, and it just had a completely calm, very serene face, just a very, and so that's what I see as joy. So my peace, my center in God, my basically my basis for my relationship with God. When I see that being just altered, and when I see that I'm not as strong as I was, that's my Brooke. When I start finding that the things in my life are making it really hard to stay perfectly centered, which is all the time, that's when my Brooke starts to dry up.
Yeah. I think we can all identify with that, like especially this season, which is just like you could never predict what 2020 was going to bring. I mean, there's no way you could see that.
Absolutely.
And then you have that, but in whatever the things were that were kind of keeping us going, like even if it's family, relationships, if it's being out, being social, going places, I mean, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And like the brook dried up
Mm-hmm.
on all of us back in March, April, May, and it's like
Even
we're
now.
all wrestling with like that moment, but what do we do with that? I mean, Matt, do you have anything like that in this season, or a time in your past where I guess you feel like, man, the brook is drying up on me?
Absolutely. That basically defines how I came into ministry in the first place. Not going too much into my story, that we don't have time for that, but I went to Embry-Riddle, was planning on doing counter-espionage, counterintelligence, working for the FBI or CIA or something like that. And through a very brief series of events where basically I handed my resume out a whole bunch of places and gotten nothing back, decided to pray about it at that point. Should have led with that, yes, but better late than never. And that's when God made a left turn on me, and we went into ministry. But I think with the conversation about the brook drying up, I think it's a conversation on perspective, because every time the brook dries up in our lives, we can either freak out that what we were depending on is disappearing, or we can get excited for, okay, God's going to move. Something new is about to happen. I don't know what it is. And I can go one of two ways with this. I can focus on me, or I can focus on him.
Yeah, I mean, so often, right, we ask God for that direction, and the brook drying up, not really how we envision it happening, but in some ways it's an answer to those prayers, right? John, you were about to jump in.
I was gonna say, I love like the perspective piece for this season, where, man, I don't want to be an alarmist by any stretch, but I think ministry and some of the things the church is doing are brand new that we never saw coming, but it required that the brook dried up. I mean, none of us, there's not one of us that calls Heights home that would choose to, hey, let's not gather in person for, I don't even know how many weeks it is at this point. Like there's no one that would say, but what we've seen come out of it from a ministry standpoint. I mean, we talked about it with Marissa of calling that the entire, that within our list of people to call and just encourage. And I mean, I don't remember a time in my 12 years, whatever it's been, that we've done that. Like and that's one of those sweet, like, had it not been for the season that we were put into, had it not been for the brook drying up, we wouldn't have stepped into this new. And I even think with Elijah, when you read that story all the way through, the next line after the brook drying up is God speaks to him. The word of the Lord came to him, and he moves into this next, to the widow and her son. And I agree, Matt. I think there's a really sweet, like if you'll hold out through the brook drying up, I think there's a really sweet new opportunity on the other side. But it's the perspective to see that just like God led me to the brook, he'll lead me into the next brook. And Marissa, wholeheartedly agree on joy and, like, for me, passion. I can remember when we were in Canada before this, I remember God removing our passion for the ministry we were doing. And it was so clear, yet it was a 2-year watching the brook dry up before we stepped into the next thing. And all it was I remember going to sit with my mom and going, hey, Mom, I have a knot in my stomach. My gut's twisted. I know God's doing something different. I have no clue what it is. And had no idea it was coming. It was just the brook started drying up and you got to watch it. But it's cool.
Yeah. If you look at Elijah again too, another thing that brook drying up did was its preparation, right? I think I was talking with Marissa earlier this afternoon, and I feel like God takes us through these kind of ups and downs because he's just trying to actually build us up. He's trying to like build that track record that we have with him so that he can, he's going to put some weight on us in our relationship with him that needs to be shored up with a track record of watching him come through. Look at like Elijah. I mean, you flip ahead next chapter, he's on Mount Carmel with those, prophets of Baal. Like, that's intense, right? I mean, he's literally standing down like the entire nation, like he's it. And there he is all alone. And you can't help but imagine that things like the brook and the provision from that, he's just like, man, God has got my back before, and he's not going to let me down this time, And I think those seasons of watching God dry up our brook, and then come through for us, it just keeps building that track record, So here's a question for you too. I think another factor that strikes me on this is just our emotions. This is something, I guess, for me, I've talked about it before, like my, kind of recovering Baptist background. Again, if you're Baptist, it's fine. Please don't be offended. But, which for me, the previous season of my walk with Jesus was kind of like based on fact, and emotions, you got to just stuff those down. Like, hey, it's faith over fear. It's, faith is the engine on the train. Feelings are the caboose, and keep it in the back. And if you can even just pull the pin on that caboose and let it roll down the hill, have no emotions, even better. Like that's, and I see why that was an emphasis. I'm not trying to mock it, but I feel like that's also not healthy. And I feel like when the brook dries up, you have all these emotions that are just you're wrestling with, right? And they're not great. And some of those emotions are directed toward God himself, right? And there's a real temptation. Do you guys feel this? Like a real temptation just to stuff that and be like, well, faith over fear, even though inside you're like really wrestling with God. I mean, I see people nodding here. Marissa, I'm going to you
Oh, and you got to stop picking on me, man.
You were nodding the most. You weren't making
I
eye contact.
was. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was agreeing wholeheartedly with you. At one point, so funny fact, about a year ago, I want to say, almost exactly a year ago, I had a pretty long conversation actually with John about the fact that my relationship with God had just gotten so matter of the fact, so based on fact, based on what we've proven about God, what who he is, things like that. And it very much went to, okay, so I believe this means I need to do this and this and this and this and this. And it lacked that love. And it lacked that emotion behind it. And not to say that you live your life by your emotion, right? You live your life by faith. But still, so it was funny that you were saying that, because what a roller coaster it's been to kind of moving myself back and truly finding that relationship again, rather than just that person that was, making sure that I was doing everything the right way, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what were some of the things that helped you kind of, or were part of your process from getting your emotions as part of the equation in your spiritual life, I guess?
Yeah.
I'm saving the easy questions for you tonight.
Seriously, what is this, Owen? Honestly, I'm still trying to kind of figure it out. One of the things that I've heard, I've talked to multiple people about it, Matt being one of them. And Matt told me to date Jesus. So I'm dating Jesus. Honestly, I mean, it's just one of those things where I am trying so hard to not just focus on what I'm doing and what's going on in life, so much as I'm trying to focus on what I'm being taught, what I'm supposed to, be getting taught, rather than just going through and going, well, this is just terrible. I'm trying to focus on God's love for me. You know what I mean? I'm trying to focus on God's attributes and the relationship that he so desperately wants to have with me, and that I so desperately want to have with him, except for, those pockets of just true anger towards God for certain things that are just a bummer that are happening. And it's real. And people don't talk about the fact that they get angry at God. And guess what? I am here to say, you get angry at God. It is what it is. I have had many conversations where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little angry at you, God, or I'm a lot angry at you. But the fact that you can keep moving, the fact that you can keep focusing on not just what you have to do, but that relationship behind it, and the true feelings that you want to have behind it, the true love, that true passion to not just do things because you're supposed to, because you want to, because you want to do that for God, because you're a child of God. So, I guess focusing on that mostly, and it's a complete roller coaster, and I am still on it, and that's okay.
So Matt, you're a counselor, man. Is it okay to be angry with God? For real?
Is it okay to be angry with anybody else? Of course.
Oh,
yes.
It is. Okay.
Of course it is. And one of the
and I have something to confess right now. I'm angry with you. No.
Okay, good. Well, here we go. Now I know why I'm here on midweek. Let's have that conversation.
Sorry, Matt.
No, you're good. One of the healthiest things you can do in any relationship is, I'm disappointed with you, I'm angry with you, I'm whatever unpleasant emotion. I'm not even going to say negative emotion, because emotions aren't positive or negative. They just are. There's ones we enjoy more than others. But so I have this unpleasant, not exciting emotion as a result of an interaction I had with you, whether the you is spouse or friend or parent or whoever. That's one of the healthiest things you can do in a relationship, because then it gets it out on the table and you can talk about it, you can work through it, and you can resolve it. And same thing with God. If we have the perspective of us and God as, he did this for me, now I need to do all this for him, that there's totally void of relationship. But if we have a genuine relationship with God, whether you're brand new at it or you've been doing it for years and years, if you have a relationship with God, it's okay to let him know, God, I'm really hurt right now. I'm pissed off. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I don't know what's going on, and it's wrecking me. That's one of the healthiest things you can do, because you really only have two options. You either voice it or you stuff it. And if you stuff it, it turns into bitterness and resentment, and it only creates a chasm.
For me, I think the point where I started to realize I really could bring my emotions to God too, not just sticking with the fact-based relationship, was when it sunk in that God really is a person that wants to have a relationship with me. And so that means emotions are part of it. You know what I mean? Like, just like you said, Matt, like, it's not like God is a, formula. If I push the right buttons or I twist the Rubik's Cube in the right order, like, then I unlock what I want. It's like, we're just on this adventure together, God and I. And just like any other, cross-country road trip with friends or whatever, like, you're going to have those times when you just irritate each other. But God is not only okay with that. I learned he actually wants that, because that's taking me into relationship with him. That's past just the surface level.
Yeah, and if you think about any significant relationship you have in your life, again, spouse, friends, whatever, you're closer because you had the conflict and you worked through it together. You whether you realized it in the moment or not, you essentially said to each other, you're worth fighting this out with. and you're closer now today than you were before that fight or disagreement or frustration took place.
What's cool with Elijah, I was thinking about it. So James connects prayer to the rain stopping. What hit me was everything within Elijah knew the answer to the brook was rain, but he doesn't pray for rain. And that was pretty stunning to me. You know, in the relationship sense, he could have made that relationship very one way. God, you're the answer to my need right now. Make it rain because I only care about me. And to know he didn't, that he actually let it dry up. And then you think about the emotions he would have had as it was drying up. And I think the Psalms are a great example. Like, if you can't read the Psalms and go, yeah, they were pretty, you know, just dry as can be. There's no emotion really. And I mean, the Psalms are like 1 minute. You can go from one verse where it's like, God, you're the best, to what in the world? Where were you? You know, like, and then the next moment he's back into you're the best. And, you know, it's just this, everything you're saying, Matt, it's this beautiful relationship of, man, I'm going to be honest because that's what's going to push this forward. And I'm sure Elijah had moments of going, God, I'm not enjoying drinking mud. I'd really, you know, like to not be sitting next to this brook. And, you know, and to watch how God provided was so supernatural in the next, you know, part of the story. And to know that that's all same God in our journey, exact same God. And that's kind of exciting.
Kind of, it's like the, go ahead, Matt, go ahead.
Sorry, one more thought.
Yeah.
If you think about any movie that you really enjoy or a novel that you've read recently, it did not go where the main character just had a blasé life all the way through and then it ended. How boring would that be? You'd turn it off after 3 minutes of watching it, or you'd close the book, send it back to the library. That's lame. But when we're the main character, when we're the protagonist, we want comfort, ease, sustainability, chill. But we don't grow like that. I have no idea where I read this. I wish I could find it, but I read somewhere that our spiritual walk is a lot like water. When it's calm and still, it stagnates and it turns into a swamp. But if it's moving and rushing and it's smashing into boulders, it's white rapids, that's the purest and cleanest water you'll ever find. And I just love that picture because the water's not having any fun. If it had a voice, it'd be screaming the whole time. But that's clean, pure water.
That's awesome.
Man, I need my reactions back on here. You know,
you don't get reactions.
We gotta get some. I didn't think I had them. We gotta get there. It is. We gotta get some claps for that.
Give Matt the clap.
There it is.
Clap hands. There
Dude, quote out of nowhere. Just pulled that out of nowhere. Come on.
And midweek rather gets so much better when it's just not you and I, John, talking about breakfast food from England. Let's be honest.
Dude, last week was the low. I'm not gonna lie. It was the low last week. It was so low going. They didn't even like broadcast that we were doing it.
No,
there was no reminder. It was just like, dude, stay away from this one. We'll see you next week.
Not worth it. We'll try again next week. We'll get some smart people on this show. Yeah, I love that. John, man, that's an awesome insight. As we kind of tie a ribbon on this, I guess, try to wrap this up, is Elijah and that unselfishness, right? I mean, he prayed for the rain to stop because God told him to, and then he's suffering with everybody else as consequences of that rain stopping, and we don't have any record of it, him praying for that rain. He waited to the moment when God said, now it's time to pray. I was talking with a buddy this afternoon, kind of along the same line, where he was saying, you know, all of us in this season, he's at more than ever, you know, he finds himself praying like, man, Jesus, come on back, you know, this is a good time, you know, to end it if we want to do that, you know, okay. And he said he realized that, you know, if he really loved the people around him, he'd be praying, God, give us a little more time. like he does, right? God's just patient. He waits. And love for us is to not look for an escape, hanging in there like Elijah did. And
that's another round of applause right there. That's a good word. Get your buddy on here. It's so true, man. It's so true. Cause I know, like I hear so many people with 2020 and they're just done with it. And I get it. Like I have my days when I'm one of those people, like, peace out, let's go, and at the same time, man, when I look around my neighborhood, there's a lot of work to be done. Like there's a lot of, it ain't time. And if the Lord calls it, then the Lord calls it. But until he does, man, we got stuff to do. And I think the Elijah one was so, and this kind of ties in, but I'm going to use it just because one of the things that was in my notes for this weekend was this order that earth follows heaven, but heaven is giving the lead. And the idea was with the rain, the famine caused on earth was following the lead of heaven and the lack of rain. And it was just this, like, it never made it to the message, but it was one of those that I actually had highlighted going, man, this is so good. If we could just grasp this, that what we're dealing with here has already passed the hand of heaven. That what we're following is heaven's lead. And going back to Matt's thing, in the story, heaven is the one writing the story. God is the one writing the story. And he's writing this season for the church of, man, there's angst and we got to fight through and we got to figure out and we got to stand together and we got to define what church is and how we grow. And like, that's all part of this beautiful, and we'll be, like you're saying, Matt, through the story, we'll be better on the other side. We'll look a whole lot more like Jesus, and hopefully a whole lot more where it's like Elijah, where it's away from us and on others. Our lives will live that way, but it's pretty
beautiful. Well, that's a good spot to end it right there as we wrap this thing up. Marissa, Matt, thanks for jumping in. John, appreciate your message Sunday. Appreciate you helping us extend it out here on midweek. Just want to let you guys know that we love you guys. We're praying for you constantly. Marissa is proof of the fact that we care. 400 plus calls later, we're trying to reach out and connect with you any way we can. So help us do that. Don't be shy. Let us know what you need so we can reach out and connect with you. All kinds of ways to do that, starting with things even through YouTube. We got our weekend services this Sunday at 10:30, 6 p.m.
We got special guests this weekend.
Oh, that's right. We got that special guest this weekend. Yeah,
special guest speaker, and his message is awesome.
Okay. So don't miss that. And then we got Friday. We got morning coffee. Morning coffee happens Monday, Wednesday, Fridays every morning at 10 o'clock.
I got Friday. You're gonna fix my car with me, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we had.
We did breakfast last week. Maybe we'll fix my daughter's car this week. Who knows?
Okay. All right. I'm up for that. I'll come over. I'll hold the camera. That's awesome. Yeah. What else? Oh, and then of course, social media. You can also reach us by email at hello@heightschurch.com. Any way we can. We want to connect. We want to pray with you. We want to stand with you. And maybe you're saying, hey, I'm in a season where my brook's drying up. We just want you to know, here's 4 people who have been in seasons like that too. We've wrestled with the emotions. We've wrestled with being angry and frustrated with God. All that's okay. And there's hope on the other side because God is doing something. He's up to something around you and in you too. So we just want to be part of that journey with you. That's all the time we have. Oh, don't forget, jump over to Heights Kids tonight. They got their kids midweek program just kicked off just a few minutes ago. Get your kids over there and hang out with us. All right. Good night to panels. Good night to you all. Much love to you. See you morning coffee Friday, 10 o'clock with John, and we'll see what he's up to. Who knows? See you Sunday. Much love to you.
Everybody.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Marissa broke.
I couldn't do it. I tried